The coal operators of West Virginia felt that they had to keep the Union out in order to outcompete coal operators in other states. So from the very beginning, these are extremely high stakes.
So we've got about 2 minutes left, and one more question on this, on the kind of the backstory and the ideological fight, and then I want to get into like, okay, what actually happened with the mine wars. But lay out really quickly, what are those two competing visions of liberty that were kind of at war at the Battle of Blair Mountain?
Well, in the Battle of Blair Mountain, it's number one, it's the ideals of free market laissez-faire capitalism on one hand, and a more equitable idea on the other hand. I mean, you had a big mix of ideals. It would be incorrect to say that all the miners were ideologically the same that joined this rebellion. However, there were a lot of socialists that were involved. The Socialist Party for a while in West Virginia had some power, and then they had some popularity in West Virginia. And believe it or not, a lot of evangelical Christians were socialists in West Virginia, which if I were to go to a church and say that tomorrow morning, a lot of people's heads would explode because they wouldn't connect to themselves with that. And so it's those two main overarching ideas.
Dr. Keeney, thank you. We're going to be right back. Talk some more. Folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we've got Dr. Chuck Keeney. He is a West Virginia historian and a founding member of the Mine Wars Museum.
And author of The Road to Blair Mountain.
Author of The Road to Blair Mountain. So let's talk about The Road to Blair Mountain, as in want to talk about the book a little bit later, but the actual so give us the backstory before this big battle. Lay the groundwork for us. What was the kind of historical circumstances around this battle?
Okay, so West Virginia, of course, by the 1880s, they begin to understand through geologic surveys that there's a whole lot of coal in West Virginia. And outside investors begin to come in and begin buying up all of the land, taking the land a lot of times from native mountaineers that had been here for a while, my family among them. My family lost 2,000 acres to the coal industry in around 1883, 1884. And this happened to a lot of mountain families that had been around for a while. They lost their land and found themselves working in coal camps. And so the coal industry comes in, and they do, in some ways, kind of a hostile takeover of the state in which they control the politics, the judges, the land, and they build up these little coal towns in which they operate these towns independently. And I think you guys are probably familiar with the company town structure. But in West Virginia, you had the highest percentage of coal miners living in company towns than in any other state.
Company towns
somewhere in the neighborhood, close to
Democrat.
90% of all West Virginia coal miners lived on company property. The second highest state was Illinois with about 48%. So twice as many, from a ratio, twice as many in West Virginia were living in company towns, which means they had a company town, you had a company store, company church, company money, company saloon. You get the point. They had their mail opened. They had their ballots filled out for them on election day. They also had the brutal mine guard system, the security forces that companies would have. And they were brutal. They spied on people. They posed as saloon keepers. They posed as miners. They spied on people. They beat up potential union organizers. You could be beat up and lose your job for possessing the wrong kind of literature, a United Mine Workers Journal, so on and so forth. And then eventually the miners themselves, fight back. And you don't just have native white miners, of course. You have a lot of immigrants that are brought in, African Americans that come up from the South. And they all are stuck in these little company towns together, and ultimately they end up joining forces and try to unionize. Many of them become socialists. The Socialist Party became rather popular in a lot of coal camps. My great-grandfather was a socialist. And had a number of little socialist mayors in towns that were incorporated towns right off company property. You often had a little socialist mayor right off company property. You had this on the Pink Creek, Cabin Creek strike. So anyway, around 1912, the miners try to organize. Now, these were big stakes for the United Mine Workers, and the reason it was because you had the UMWA had been successful in organizing the Central Bituminous Field a couple of years before 1912, and this was, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. However, West Virginia coal operators, because they were able to keep the union out, they were able to undersell these coal operators in the Central Bituminous Field. They were able to sell coal cheaper, and they were running these other coal operators out of business. So the coal operators of the Central Bituminous Field told the UMWA, if you don't organize West Virginia, we're cutting our union contracts. So the UMWA had to organize West Virginia in order to stay viable as an organization. The coal operators of West Virginia felt that they had to keep the union out in order to outcompete coal operators in other states. So from the very beginning, these are extremely high stakes. And they go on strike. Everybody's evicted from their homes. They live in tent colonies, and the miners begin organizing themselves into guerrilla warfare units. My great-grandfather was in one of those called the Dirty 11. And they blew up tipples, they tore up railroad tracks, they attacked scabs, then they attacked mine guards. There were pitched battles that took place in the Pink Creek, Cabin Creek strike in which, 15 people would be killed in one battle, 10 in another, 16 in another. Mother Jones, of course, the very famous national union organizer, comes to West Virginia. They ultimately win the Pink Creek, Cabin Creek strike and bring the union into the Kanawha coal fields. And Frank Keeney, who became the leader, him and Fred Mooney, who became the two big leaders during that strike. And they weren't union organizers. They were just miners who just took it over themselves. Yeah. And they become the union leadership in West Virginia. During World War I, they successfully organized the whole state except for 3 counties, Mingo, McDowell, and Logan County, the southernmost coal counties. And these were high coal-producing counties, but they couldn't organize them because of the heavily entrenched mine guard system that was there. And so they had this unionizing drive after World War I. Things get even more violent. Mingo County becomes known as Bloody Mingo. You had a lot of events known as the Battle of Matewan, sometimes called the Matewan Massacre, that's a very famous gunfight that took place. You had the 3 days Battle of the Tug, a 3-day battle along the Tug River on the Kentucky-West Virginia border that killed in excess of 30 people. We really don't know the exact number of people. In a lot of these gunfights, we really don't know exactly how many people were killed. And they declared martial law in Mingo County. They brought in troops. And they began arresting miners. They cut off the family's food supplies that were living in the tent colonies. And ultimately, 2 individuals, Sid Hatfield and Ed Chambers, one of them was a chief of police in Matewan, and his deputy were murdered on the McDowell County Courthouse steps by mine guards. And that was kind of the spark that led to miners in the other coal fields decide, we're going to march from Charleston down into these counties and forcibly drive the mine guards out and release the miners that were prisoners and bring food and supplies to the people that were living in these tent colonies. The Lick Creek tent colony had become known by that time as Labor's Valley Forge. And just appalling conditions families were living in. And so they were trying to march south to Mingo County to drive out the mine guards. But in between Mingo County and Charleston was Logan County. And there was a series of ridge lines that kind of made a natural fortress about 5 or 6 miles north of Logan, town of Logan. And this is where the sheriff of Logan County and the mine guard set up defensive entrenchments along a 12-mile front on these ridge lines, beginning at Blair Mountain and going up to Mill Creek. It's called the Battle of Blair Mountain, but the battle was much bigger than the actual mountain. Okay, it took place along a 12-mile front for 5 days. And miners, it started out with about 5,000 miners. The numbers may have swelled up to around 15,000. They were organized. We don't have time to get into the organization of it, but in August 1921 is when they begin marching south. They fight this 5-day pitched battle between company forces and state troopers and the miners themselves who were organized. Of course, the miners wore red bandanas around their necks. That had been a tradition that had been going on for quite a while at that time, and were referred to as rednecks as a result of that. That's not the exact origin of the term redneck, but in West Virginia, if you said redneck, that meant a Union man at the time. But because the miners didn't control the press, they didn't control the media, they were portrayed as backward, ignorant hillbillies, and the term redneck kind of became associated with someone who's backward and ignorant. Because the miners themselves didn't control the media. But to them, the red bandana meant Union solidarity. That's what the term meant. And it has become this kind of scarlet thread throughout West Virginia history. Teachers, when they went on strike in 2018, they wore red bandanas around their necks to recall the miners of Blair Mountain. So it's been a continuing tradition. Anyway, federal troops were eventually brought in. The miners surrendered. There was a series of treason trials which took place thereafter. And the mine wars kind of fizzled out after that. So that's a very quick nutshell of what happened.
Yeah, and it's rare that me and Jacob don't try to interject somewhere, but we're both sitting here like children in a schoolhouse.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.